So next year will mark 10 full years that I've been self-employed. That's 10 full years without a boss, without having to follow a dress code, without having to wake up to an alarm clock, and without having to ask permission to take a day off. I think that a lot of people are drawn to entrepreneurship for what I consider to be very shallow reasons. Reasons like some perceived sense of prestige, or the delusion that you're going to passively make millions of dollars, or some other outlandish daydream like that. But as for myself, I've been entrepreneurial by nature my entire life. I don't know why, it's kind of just always how I've been, but my motivation has never been that grandiose. In fact, I've only ever had 3 goals this entire time. Goal number 1 was just to never have to wake up early. I am not a morning person. In fact, that's a massive understatement, but sleep is probably the absolute most important thing in my life. It comes above all else, and I never wanted to have to compromise that for a paycheck. Goal number 2 was to never have to answer to somebody or be told what to do. I hate having to follow arbitrary rules without any logic or reason behind them, and so I figured the best way to get around all of that was just to be the one calling the shots and making all the decisions for myself. And finally, goal number 3 was just to work less. At the last traditional job that I had, I was earning $13 an hour. I was working Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and if you do the math, that works out to about $25,000 a year. Not only did I just straight up hate that job, not only was I always sleep deprived, and not only was I mad that I was only making $25,000 a year, but I was particularly mad that I had to work so many hours for such little money. So when I ultimately found myself out of that job and trying to pursue self-employment full-time, my goal was not just to increase my income, but also to decrease the number of hours I had to work to earn that higher income. Basically, I wanted to find a way to earn a full-time living while working part-time hours, or at least definitely less than 40 hours a week. This has admittedly been a work in progress over the last number of years, and it has involved a lot of trial and error, but I think I've finally cracked the code on how not just I, but really anybody can earn a full-time living while working part-time hours, even if you're not self-employed, even if you work a regular job. Starting with doubling your hourly wage. Where's that sarcastic Simpsons clip that I always use?
My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I know, this sounds completely outlandish. It seems like, well, if it was that easy, of course everybody would just do it. But in a lot of cases, it really is that easy. Let me explain. Let's say, hypothetically, you're working a day job right now and you're making $20 an hour. If you can find a position that will pay you $40 an hour, you could, in essence, cut your working hours in half and maintain the same income. And I know that might sound easier said than done by a lot, but there's actually a lot of ways you can do this that you may not be aware of. For starters, and I know I've mentioned this in other videos, but looking around on Indeed or Glassdoor or other similar websites, you might find that there are a lot of companies offering positions very similar to yours, if not exactly the same, that are paying you significantly higher than your current employer is paying you. And so if you can find a very similar role within another company, you can get a massive pay bump just from that, which again will either give you the opportunity perhaps to work less or to keep working full-time and just double your income, which is also great. If that's not a viable option, you can always decide to just go learn a new skill or get a new certification that will allow you to get a big pay bump, which will again potentially double or maybe even triple your income in some cases. But I think the faster and more efficient way to double your hourly wage is just to do whatever it is you're doing right now on a freelance or self-employed basis. Now, admittedly, this doesn't work for every single job out there, but it does work for a lot of them. If you work in any sort of trade or physical hands-on job, if you are a designer, if you are a consultant, if you are a web developer, if you're a bookkeeper or accountant, or you do private instruction of any kind, chances are very likely that you can basically just cut out your employer, who is essentially a useless middleman, and go out there and offer your services to the world directly and charge 2 to 3 to 5 times more than you're currently being paid. Like, for example, if you're a plumber working for a commercial plumbing company, and let's say you're getting paid a salary of $80,000 a year, which on a full-time basis works out to about $40 an hour, if you are a freelance plumber, you can easily be charging $100 or even $200 an hour for your time directly to the consumer. Chances are likely that your employer is billing at least that much, if not more, to the person or company you're working for, and they're just keeping all that extra profit, which could be going directly into your pocket. Now, tip number 2 is something that has saved me hours and hours and hours of work every single week, and that is to leverage technology. Whatever it is that you do for a living, chances are very likely that there are apps or software or tools or even AI programs that can take care of a lot of the more mundane tasks for you, so you can focus on the things that are actually more important. One of the absolute best tools that I personally use, which saves me at least an hour or two every single day, is a free Google Chrome extension called Magical, who's also sponsoring this video. If, like me, you field a lot of emails, this is going to completely change your life. Magical is totally free and quick to install, and it is packed with features designed to boost your productivity and save you so much time. I get a lot of emails from prospective clients who all mostly ask the same questions. So with Magical, I can use custom templates to answer those emails in seconds directly within my Gmail. Not only that, but Magical's transfer feature can instantly scrape and compile data from my open tabs and automatically organize it into a spreadsheet with the click of a button. Like if, for example, I was looking for a new job and I wanted to collect the contact info of recruiters from a bunch of companies, boom, bye-bye data entry. As a business owner, admin tasks are such a huge time suck, and they amount to hours and hours of unpaid work every single week. So if, like me, you're eager to stop wasting so much time, head over to getmagical.com/recordingtonicole to download Magical AI for free today, and thank you to Magical for sponsoring this video. Over and above just answering emails, there are tons of apps out there nowadays who can take care of so many of the more mundane parts of your job for you. Everything from editing photos and videos to managing your scheduling to writing copy or code for you. And using these types of programs can free up hundreds of hours of time for you each month, which you can spend doing better things. Like not working. I remember at that last job that I had, which was a data entry position at this record and CD distribution company, I made a bunch of Excel formulas and shortcuts, which would allow me to basically just copy and paste everything, and Excel would do all the work for me. I didn't tell anybody there that I was doing this, but it allowed me to get an entire day's worth of work done before lunchtime, and then I could spend the rest of the day discreetly browsing for a better job on Indeed because I hated that place with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. Oh my goodness, is it sunny here? Let's close the blinds real quick. That's better. So the third trick that I've used to increase my income while decreasing the number of hours I'm working is the 80-20 rule, also known as Pareto's principle. The 80-20 rule states that 80% of outcomes result from 20% of causes, basically meaning that 80% of your progress and success is probably coming from 20% of the things you're actually doing, and the other 80% of the stuff you're doing is mostly a waste of time. I look at this as integrating minimalism into my work by asking myself things like, do I actually need to be doing this thing? Is there actually a benefit to it? Or what would happen if I just decided not to? I'll give you an example. So when I first started my business, I would sell my services to people and I would offer them an additional perk for free, what I called unlimited lifetime support, meaning that after we finished working together, if they had a quick question, they were welcome to email me or phone me whenever they needed, and I would do my best to help them out at no extra cost. The way that I saw this, it was a nice customer service gesture. It was also a potential lead for more paid work down the line. If somebody called me with a particularly complicated question that I couldn't help them with over the phone, I could potentially sell them more of my services at a later date, and I figured it's not going to be a big deal. What ultimately wound up happening was that very, very few people, if any, took advantage of this offering. Very few people felt the need to reach out after we were done working together. I would say 90% of them never used it. But the 10% who did were the neediest, most annoying people that you could ever possibly imagine encountering. And these were the people who were determined to take every last drop from you that they felt that they could, to exploit every single thing you could possibly offer them. And I would get just reamed with calls and calls and calls and emails from the same people asking the same questions over and over again, who had zero interest in actually paying me for more services and just wanted to basically exploit the generous offering I had given them. And it made me realize at a certain point that I could just stop making this offering, and 90% of people were never going to notice or care to begin with, and those 10% of people I didn't really want to be dealing with either way, and it wasn't going to be a big deal. So I stopped offering that, and as a result, nothing has changed. My bottom line has not changed at all. There have been no negative effects to it, and I have freed up many hours every week not having to field these ridiculous inquiries from people who are just trying to get something for nothing. When I worked a retail job, every single morning, the managers would try to gather all the staff members together for what they called the morning huddle, where they would basically go over the sales metrics from the previous week and discuss the targets for the coming week. Except that we were all minimum wage employees who were not getting commission, so why would we care about any of those things? Like, why would I give a flying fuck how much money a giant corporation is making while paying me $11 an hour?
I said fuck you! And your eyebrows!
These meetings made me sympathize with Van Gogh. Like, maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe he just sawed his ears off so he wouldn't have to listen to this pointless drivel every morning. Because let me tell you, it was tempting. I made it abundantly clear from the start that I was completely disinterested in these meetings and I didn't care to participate and I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And further to that, I made it abundantly clear that in this 20 minutes that they were wasting, I could instead be so much more productive. I could tidy up every aisle in the store, I could refill every register with shopping bags and receipt papers, I could take all the garbage out to the dumpsters, but instead we were just standing around listening to the managers go on about something that none of us cared about. Needless to say, I was credited with killing the morning huddle, and I'm very proud of myself. It completely blows my mind how many labor hours and how much money corporations waste on meetings that could have been emails or on other bureaucratic nonsense. And one more tip on this point before we move on. I know this won't be for everybody, but when I was working these types of jobs, I figured out that if I skipped my half-hour unpaid lunch break, I could just go home 30 minutes sooner at the end of the day. And do you know what's better than sitting in a cold, sterile corporate break room for 30 minutes? Well, literally anything, but especially going home. And finally, the fourth strategy to free up more of your time from the things you don't really want to be doing anyways is to outsource or hire help. For anything that can't be addressed through an app or some sort of software and that can't be cut out entirely, outsourcing can make a lot of sense. Chances are very likely that you can hire people to help you with some of the more mundane tasks of your job, and those people might actually be better at those things than you are because they might be specialists. And that applies whether we're talking about SEO or digital marketing or even something like just taking photographs for your Etsy store. While outsourcing obviously does cost you money up front, it can actually help you to increase your income overall, because when you have less tasks on your plate that you have to handle by yourself, you can now allocate more time to the parts of your job that actually bring revenue in. Like, let's say I pay a freelancer for 10 hours of, digital marketing of some sort. And now I can spend 4 or 5 hours doing something that's going to generate significantly more than I'm even paying that freelancer, and at the same time, free up 5 to 6 hours of my time. This entire journey started for me when I had a sudden realization one day. I'd been working 40 plus hours a week, every week, for years on end, without any real kind of break. On my 2 days off, I would try to catch up on sleep and then do all of the boring life things that we all need to do, things like laundry and grocery shopping. And when all was said and done, I had very little time and very little energy left to do the things that I actually enjoyed doing. I would spend most of my time off anxiously dreading the start of the next work week, and before I knew it, the Sunday night blues started on Friday afternoon, like I was already anticipating the start of the next week before the current week had even ended, and I was miserable. And the realization that I had was that when I was younger and I was only working part-time, I had a lot of hobbies. I had a lot of things that I enjoyed and looked forward to. I used to play guitar pretty much every single day. I used to plan record shopping trips in the city. I liked to go bike riding with friends. Going out after work sounded like fun, and if I had a friend who lived out of the area, I had no hesitation to go make a road trip to go visit with them. But somewhere along the way, I started taking on more shifts and working more hours. Part of it was out of a feeling of obligation, like I felt that as an adult, if I was not working full-time and I was not being as productive as society says I should be, that I was just going to be seen as a lazy bum. But another big part of it was obviously just financial. When I was earning as little money as I was, obviously I needed to work a lot to overcompensate for my crappy wage. So anytime I was offered a shift, I would just say yes because I needed to make money. But once I started working full-time, without even realizing it, I kind of lost all of my hobbies. I woke up one morning and realized it had been months since I touched my guitar. Making elaborate weekend plans just felt like way too much effort, and I definitely didn't want to go out to do anything after work. And then it all came to a head one evening when I was at work, and I remembered suddenly that I had a concert coming up that I was going to that weekend, and I had completely forgotten that I had bought these tickets. And instead of feeling excited, instead of looking forward to it, I was just overwhelmed by the feeling of dread. Like, I was just so exhausted, and the last thing in the world that I wanted to do was to have to go to this concert on the weekend, even though I actually wanted to and bought the tickets, but I was just too tired to care. Without even realizing it, at just 21 years old, my entire life had become work, sleep, eat, repeat, and really nothing else. And that was my worst nightmare, and it was particularly devastating because I was only 21. And it was in that moment that I remember telling myself, there has to be a better way, because I was selling my soul, I was selling my happiness, all of my energy, and really my sense of self for $25,000 a year. I know that this might sound depressing to some, but when I think back, I realize that all of my major accomplishments in life have initially stemmed from a sense of unhappiness, from me being in a situation that I was desperate to get out of and then working to find a solution that made me happier. By using all of these strategies, I was eventually able to take my work schedule down from 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, to just 5 to 6 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week. And by freeing up all that time, I was able to find myself again. I was able to get back into my hobbies and to find new ones, including this YouTube channel, which has been so much fun and so fulfilling and hopefully brought you guys some value. That's the point after all. As I said before, you definitely don't have to be self-employed to use these strategies. I think there's always going to be ways that you can improve your income and improve your life overall, even if you're just an employee at a company, by just thinking outside of the box a little bit and just being a little bit strategic. With that said, I do think that there's something really special about self-employment, because when you work for somebody else in some way, shape, or form, whether you're hourly, salaried, commissioned, whatever it may be, your income is going to be in some way tied to the number of hours you're working. Whereas when you work for yourself, your income is going to be tied exclusively to the results that you get, not how many hours it takes you to achieve those results. And I think that that can open up a world of possibilities. I think that hustle culture has indoctrinated so many people into believing that the more you work and the harder you work, the better of a person you are. And I just don't believe that at all. I am a huge proponent of work smarter, not harder, because no matter how much you like your job or don't like your job or whatever it may be, your job is not your whole life, and it shouldn't be. And I think that it's so important to keep that in mind and remember that your job is a means to an end, and your job's purpose is to give you a life, not to be your life. Because in the words of our Lord and Savior, Tom DeLonge, late night, come home, work sucks. I know. As always, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, so leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that any of these strategies will work for whatever it is you do for a living, or let me know if you have another idea that maybe I didn't mention. If you enjoyed this video at all, please go ahead and hit that like button. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. You can follow me on Instagram at according_to_Nicole. That's all I have for you guys for this one. Don't work too hard. I'll see you next week.